folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. Joined today by a cat who I got a chance to see at Music on the Mountain, Jazz on the Mountain, a couple weeks ago with Max Goldschmidt. And I really blew my socks off, knocked my socks off, just his sort of ability to play with good feel and time. It wasn't necessarily about monster chops or anything, or showing those off. It was about making the music feel good. Calvin Simmers, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor, man. You know, I wanted you to talk about, it's funny, I was going back and doing a transcription of my interview with Reggie Workman, who played with John Coltrane, among others. And he talked about how all the seminal drummers in jazz at a certain period of time, Elvin, Roy Haynes, Max Roach, they all had a character cymbal. They had a character cymbal beat. You could tell by their, and he goes, you could see a modern performance of jazz today, 45-minute set, phenomenal musicians, and the drummer doesn't touch the cymbals. And I just wanted you to talk about your own, whether you've thought about it or not, the cymbal character that you've tried to develop in your own playing.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's cymbal character. I've talked to certain people who tell me it's all about, like, you can hear like a lineage of drummers that like you can kind of hear different parts of people that they've tried to incorporate into their playing, and that's why they play a certain way. And I would say like mine, it started out heavily inspired by drummers like Art Blakey or Max Roach
and Philly Joe
Jones, and then I've been getting more into like Tony Williams as well. I mean, he was beyond
sort of in his own room, you know.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you a question. Like, that period of jazz lent itself to keeping time on the cymbals in some cases, where I feel like, especially in a lot of different kind of music, how have you tried to dance on the cymbals in any kind of music? To me, that is the mystical part of music. The idea of relentless bass drum for timekeeping is not where it's at for me. It's that cymbal character. So, I mean, how have you learned to incorporate the cymbals in all forms of music?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from my background, just studying the jazz masters. I mean, I guess, like what you said, I mean, I find the ride cymbal, and I've been playing this way. It's like the ride cymbal is the like driving force of what
exactly
the groove should come from and such. And yeah, I like you were saying, like the bass drum or the snare or the driving forces in some other kinds of music, because of, just other genres and such. But yeah, I found as well, it's like the dancing of the ride cymbal is always like something that gives the music something to lift up on.
Let me, I'm not a musician, so please set me straight. What do certain types of music not lend themselves to cymbal beats? I mean, is it where it has to be that driving, almost machine gun double bass drum thing? Is that more mod music?
Well, like I don't know. It's like I would say, like I've been told kind of that it can be like jazz music.
Yeah.
The ride cymbal is the most important thing, and then then you have the hi-hat that's also doing its thing, and then eventually you have the snare, and then the bass drum, which like you find in like rock music, it's gonna be like the snare is gonna be, or the bass drum is gonna be the most important, and then you eventually to the hi-hats, and then I mean even in some rock music they're doing like tom beats and stuff. It's a lot more drum oriented and less cymbal oriented, which is just kind of what happens in different genres for different sounds.
Can you talk to the audience about if you feel like rhythm has always been embedded in you? I talked to a cat that I saw at Chicago bar. He doesn't live here locally, but he's very close friends with Des New, and he just, his family was just, everybody in the family played drums. I'm not gonna say it was your hippie drum circle. It was like serious rhythm. Has the rhythm been embedded inside of you from an early age? Or is it something that, like, some of the best drummers I know picked up the sticks at 17.
Yeah, I mean, no one in my like family really played music at all.
Wow, you're off the grid.
Yeah. So I it was kind of from a place of when I was in elementary school, kind of just ended up doing some concert band stuff and percussion stuff, and then I found the Tucson Jazz Institute, which I kind of introduced me to the more like jazz world of things in middle school, and I've just been kind of trying to learn as much as I can and be around people who have been playing a lot and such.
Who can you talk about a seminal percussion instructor that you had at Tucson Jazz Institute that sort of opened your world to, about basically, in my mind, I guess playing melodically, still keeping time on the kid, but also playing melodically on the kid.
I would say the biggest like mentor I've had in Tucson.
Project your voice a little louder.
Yeah, the biggest mentor I've had in the Tucson Jazz Institute would be this instructor who used to live here and still is around here. Is this drummer named Kai Felix. And,
I just saw him, dude. Dude, talk about Kai, man, because dude, that you want to talk about no footprint on new media, nothing. But man, he swung his ass off when I saw him with Misha.
Yeah, and I mean, Kai was really the teacher that kind of had me like working out all my technical stuff and really would talk to me about like just like always whatever I'm doing, it doesn't matter how you do it, whatever you're doing, make sure you could sound good and make music from whatever you're doing and not have any limitations from your technique or from how you're doing anything. And that was a big influence in just helping shape my kind of...
Is that something that, just because it comes across as in conversation as abstract, can you learn that? That was a pep talk, but was that more, it was more practical when you got on the bandstand?
I would say it was more of like a lesson throughout, just because, especially with some teachers, like many teachers would just be like, this is one way to do it, this is my way, I'm going to teach you this, and this is the right way if you ever want to make it. And that's just not the case with anything. So he was more taken as, yeah, people are going to say a bunch of other things, you should learn a bunch, but if you find something that works for you, just make sure it won't limit you in any sense, and then you kind of have to just, grind that until you make it work.
It's really important because you don't have the arc of history. You've only been on this planet for a couple decades, but it didn't. I believe that there were probably pretty strict instructors, especially like Joe Zawinul, like he in Austria. I mean, that was strict training, okay. But then there comes a point where it's like there is no right or wrong way to do something. And yet people get very insecure maybe because of their own limitations. So they say, this is how I play and this is the right way. Anything outside of that, they're too insecure to embrace it. So they're going to say that's wrong. You feel like the most important lesson was from Kai was, hey, don't limit yourself and don't affect the music, but be yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And now, how have you, in your own way, not that you're playing the Green Mill on Saturday nights yet,
no.
Okay, but when you went off to college, can you talk about some seminal growing experiences on the bandstand?
Yeah, I would first like to just say, like,
go ahead.
Like I think it's like it starts off the bandstand, especially when I just finished my first year at Northwestern. It's like trying to just organize yourself away from home in a way that you're just fully like responsible for everything you're doing, whether it's just seeing people, make sure you're eating at the right times, and then make sure you're practicing and you're going to bed, and then I guess that transfers onto the bandstand and being able to like take care of business when you get there.
Because you feel like you have other parts of your existence together. It's not because you're not the music life. I mean the jazz life for a long time. And going back to the 50s, I mean Bird was unfortunately a junkie, and everybody
Yeah.
thought he got that sound because he was a junkie, and so they tried to emulate that, people were left but for roadkill.
Yeah.
So the idea of also Neil Cassidy, Merry Prankster, who, legend, he used to say, "Never eat when you're angry." I just think you should eat when you're hungry. You know?
I would agree.
All right,
Yeah.
but like, tell me about it. Like the peace of mind you have when you feel like it's not control, but there's a semblance of order in your life, and how you can be a more open vessel when you get on the bandstand because of that.
Yeah. I mean, I've been working on it the whole year.
Yeah, no, I believe me, it's the forever journey.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good feeling to just feel like you're not really worrying about anything, or you're not stressed. And yeah, like when you get on the bandstand, you kind of have to leave all that behind, whether or not it's actually there. But it's definitely something that kind of keeps your like practice, especially in check.
Did you find have you played in a context in a band? I mean, this essentially could happen almost any time, but I just in an instrumental improvisational band where you had a lot of trust in the group, and you maybe lose where the one is, where the downbeat is. The band collectively does. But then because of the telepathy and trust within the band, everybody comes back in at the one. And you might lose the one, but then they gain it back at the same time. And I just think that is some of the most cathartic music in the world, because that's where magic in music, there's only two letters that separate that. And it speaks to more of a psych, folk, punk sort of vibe too, where it's not like you're playing a traditional American standard and leaving ahead of the tune.
Yeah.
Have you played in a band where you guys collectively, like, you enjoyed losing the one and then coming back in all together, or trying to?
I don't think I've personally I wouldn't say I enjoyed it.
I want Simmers on finding that crazy punk psych band that Anyway, but I mean, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's definitely happened where the band.
How great a feeling is that?
It's good to find it back. I mean, I personally hate the feeling of being lost in the music, to an extent of messing up. But I see what you're saying in the fact of letting it, I've played in a group where we've had kind of freer sections to where it's the unknown of what's happening, and then eventually finding back to a groove after that. I guess that's a good feeling.
That's what I'm talking. That's exactly where it's I guess where you just sort of throw away the rules. I mean, you get to a point. I guess maybe for you, you have to kind of know the rules before you break the rules.
Yeah.
But that idea of being excited about being lost and knowing that you're going to be able to find that one again, as opposed, there's that sort of mindset where it becomes that's what the goal is. That's the exhilarating part.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of people who are more locked in a grid, that is absolutely petrifying. And so I think that is almost a liberal. I mean, I'm thinking more about the Grateful Dead with Billy Kreutzmann and Phil Lesh. That rhythm section, they didn't want. I mean, Phil didn't want any backbeat. He wanted, sometimes they crashed and burned, and a lot of times it was what came out was absolutely euphoric.
Yeah.
Sometimes, so it always kind of depends. That was maybe the question. I feel like, not that you don't have a lot on your plate. You're going back to Northwestern in a couple weeks, about a month. Where do you feel like you need to grow the most on the bandstand? Is it a technique thing? Is it more mental? Where do you feel like you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone right now? Not that you're struggling.
No.
Clearly not. And you're playing tomorrow night in the organ trio with Chris Pena, who is just tearing up this town.
I mean, I think what I've been trying to just keep on working on is, I mean, there's a bunch of things, but I think for the main part, it's I feel like on my best nights, I feel really good. It's just maybe raising my worst nights, just to make sure I'm consistent, make sure there's no hiccups that I'm hearing, because it's whenever I'm listening, it's there could just be slight things that just weren't kind of
on playback or in the moment.
I guess both. So.
I was gonna say, man. I mean, easy for me to say this, but I mean, I feel like someone like you at this point, and again, easy for me to say this, but imperfection is perfection. If you're dragging behind the beat or you're dragging the beat, that's one thing. But if you're getting hung up on perfection or thinking that you could have played something better, I mean, nobody in the audience is going to know that. Period.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe some of the junkies, the music junkies, but I mean, regardless of that, I always think back, like Bernard Purdy said, he was talking about in-ear monitors, primarily in stadiums or studio recordings. But he goes, if you wear in-ear recordings, he goes, you're listening to yourself. And that when you do that, you're already behind the beat. And to me, like that's an eternal struggle for most cats, especially drummers, is just trying to stop. I'd say react. I think you do this, but when you feel like that, just start listening to the sound around you and react to those sounds. And maybe it gets a little bit weird, and maybe you'll hit a clam or whatever, and that takes the music in a whole new direction. And I just look at my generation as a Gen Xer, you a little bit younger. How have you learned to sort of embrace perfection? Because obviously I know a lot of cats, you're not the only one, they'll throw the freaking recorder against the wall because they don't like the way they played this one note in a 90-minute set.
Yeah. I mean,
it's something you're still working on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I always strive for perfection, but I try not to. I've been trying to not get on myself too much about things, but I mean, it's just something that I remember when I was recording some stuff. One of my directors, Scott Black.
Yeah.
I mean,
awesome player.
He was just saying, he would say, it's like a recording, it's just how you sound in that moment on that day, and that's just how you're gonna sound. So you can't like tear yourself up about it. Just gotta get back practicing if you want to be something different.
Well, and also, I mean, to be clear, back in the day, Calvin Simmers would have been one of the first call studio cats, but we have so much time to reminisce now about this stuff. In the past, Mickey Roker or Pete LaRocca or whoever it was, they'd be going in doing 3-4 sessions a day. They'd have to knock out a tune in an hour. They didn't have time to worry about what they, they were like, it's, I also, some of the stories that I've been able to call in my journeys have come from seminal musicians who actually hit clams on tunes and said, let me do it again. And the producer said, no, that was perfect. And that turned into a hit tune. Right place, wrong time. David Spinoza overbent a string, wanted to do it again. Dr. John Arif Mardin said, no, we're done. And that became a hit. So I feel like in some ways, you have to, sometimes also, can you talk about the feeling of getting off the bandstand and adopting the Socratic method of you must know what you don't know? And what I mean by that is there were brilliant cats that would play, more lead instrument solo stuff, and they'd blur through something, and they'd get off the bandstand, and fans or people would be like, how did you do that? And I'd be like, I have no idea. I mean, does that happen to you sometimes where you're so in the moment and people are like, how the hell did you pull that off? And you're okay saying, I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot, and I think that's why you like, that's the reason you practice, is because you kind of get together your facilities to where in the moment you kind of just let the music kind of just take wherever it goes, and if you can physically do whatever that is like needing, I mean that's when kind of the cool stuff happens.
They had magic, bro. And that's going to happen a lot tomorrow night too, with me screaming from the audience. I was going to say, do you want to finish with a little bit of you want to play a little bit before we wrap?
Sure, yeah.
Calvin Simmers, man, such an honor, bro. It's an honor to know you. Feinberg Show. We'll see you later.